I moved into the apartment because it was quiet. No busy street below the windows. No loud neighbors through the walls. Just a narrow building at the edge of the city where everything felt still, almost paused. After everything that happened before, stillness felt like safety. The landlord was a thin man with tired eyes who avoided small talk. He handed me the keys, explained the rent rules, and pointed out the basics. Water heater, circuit breaker, garbage schedule. Then, just before he left, he paused at the doorway. "Oh," he said casually, like he'd almost forgotten. "There's a camera already installed." I followed his finger. A small security camera sat in the upper corner of the living room, angled toward the front door and hallway. It looked old, not broken, just outdated. A tiny red indicator light sat beneath the lens. "For security?" I asked. He nodded too quickly. "Previous tenant wanted it. You can keep it or disconnect it. Still works." That was all he said. No explanation about why the previous tenant needed it. No paperwork, no instructions. He left before I thought to ask more. At first, the camera didn't bother me. If anything, I liked it. After moving boxes and setting up furniture, the apartment felt empty in a way that echoed. The camera made it feel watched, but in a comforting way. Like someone else acknowledged the space existed. I downloaded the app he'd written on a sticky note and synced the camera to my phone. The setup was smooth. Too smooth for something that old. The app showed a live feed of my living room, clear enough. No sound, just video. Motion detection on by default. I waved at the camera as a joke. Nothing happened. The red light stayed steady. That night, lying in bed, I told myself I was being silly for feeling uneasy. New places always feel strange at first. New shadows, new noises, new corners your mind isn't used to yet. Still, I slept with the bedroom door open. Not because of fear. Because I wanted to see the soft glow of the camera's indicator light down the hallway. Just to know it was there. The first few days passed normally. The camera sent the kind of notifications you'd expect. Motion detected when I came home. Recording saved when I walked to the kitchen. Everything made sense. I checked the footage out of curiosity more than concern. I saw myself doing ordinary things, taking off shoes, setting down my bag, standing too long scrolling on my phone. Seeing yourself when you're not aware you're being watched feels strange, but not wrong. On the fourth night, I woke up around 2 a.m. for no reason I could explain. The apartment was silent. Not the peaceful kind, just empty. I stared at the ceiling for a moment, listening. Nothing. Then my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Motion detected. Living room. I frowned. I hadn't moved. I was still in bed. My first thought was simple. The app is glitchy. That's what technology does. It fails quietly and often. I ignored it, rolled onto my side, and closed my eyes. The phone buzzed again. Motion detected. Living room. That made me open my eyes. Slowly, I picked up the phone and unlocked it. The app automatically opened the live feed. The living room was empty. No movement. No flickering lights. No shifting shadows. Just my couch, my coffee table, the closed front door. I watched the screen for almost a full minute. Nothing happened. I exhaled and felt embarrassed by the tension in my shoulders. "Stupid," I whispered. I checked the recorded clip anyway. The video was 12 seconds long. For the first 10 seconds, nothing moved. Then, in the final 2 seconds, the red indicator light beneath the camera lens blinked once. Not the normal steady glow. A deliberate blink. The clip ended immediately after. I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. Cameras don't blink like that. Indicator lights turn on and off when recording starts or stops, but this wasn't that. There was no transition, no system change, just a blink. I replayed it. Same thing. I told myself it was a power fluctuation and put the phone down. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I checked the footage again in daylight, convinced I'd exaggerated it in my half-awake state. The clip was still there. Same timestamp, same quiet room, same blink. I unplugged the camera from the wall. The red light went dark. For a long moment, I stood there looking up at it, relieved. That should have been the end of it. But when I walked into my bedroom, my phone vibrated again. Motion detected. Living room, my heart skipped. "No," I said out loud. I opened the app. The live feed was still working. The same camera angle, the same room, the same quiet. I walked back into the living room, staring up at the camera. The wire hung loose from the outlet, unplugged, yet the red light was on again, steady, watching. I stood directly beneath it, close enough to see a faint scratch on the plastic casing, something old, something left behind. "What are you powered by?" I whispered. The camera didn't react. I laughed softly, nervously, because laughing was easier than stopping myself from thinking too hard. I plugged it back in. That evening, I tried to forget about it. I cooked dinner. I called a friend. I even joked about my haunted camera. She laughed and told me to throw it away. I thought about it, but something stopped me. I didn't want to disconnect it anymore. That realization scared me more than the blinking light. That night, just before going to bed, I checked the app one last time. No alerts, no new clips. I locked my phone and set it down. As I turned off the light, my phone vibrated once more, recording saved. This time I hadn't moved. I opened the app with shaking fingers. The clip loaded. The video showed my living room exactly as it was now, dark, still. Then, half a second before the clip ended, the red indicator light blinked. Again. Only this time, it didn't blink randomly. It blinked in response. Because in the reflection of the darkened TV screen, I could see myself holding the phone, watching it, and the camera blinking back. I didn't unplug the camera again. That should have been the moment I did something rational, called someone, shut the system down completely, took it off the wall and buried it in a drawer. But fear doesn't always push you away from danger. Sometimes it pulls you closer. The next morning, sunlight filled the apartment, soft and harmless, making everything from the night before feel exaggerated. Shadows retreated into corners. The blinking light felt distant now, almost childish to have been afraid of. Almost. I made coffee and deliberately avoided looking at the camera. I didn't want to give it attention, like ignoring a bad thought and hoping it loses its power. But my phone buzzed while I was standing at the sink. Motion detected. Living room. I froze. I hadn't moved. Slowly, I put the mug down and opened the app. The live feed showed me, standing exactly where I was now, holding the coffee pot, staring at the screen. There was a delay, just a second or two. I raised my left hand. On the screen, the movement came late. Not buffering, not lag, late. Like the camera was remembering what I'd done instead of seeing it happen. My stomach tightened. I lifted my hand again, higher this time. The screen copied me again, but wrong, slower, slightly off. I stepped back. On the screen, I didn't. I watched myself stand there while my real body moved away from the sink. The image corrected itself after a moment, snapping back into sync. My breath came shallow. "It's just the Wi-Fi," I told myself. "Interference." That explanation had always worked before. I held on to it like a crutch and forced myself to continue with my morning. But all day, I felt watched. Not by the camera alone, but by the recordings. Because every time I checked the app later, the saved clips didn't match what I remembered doing. A clip from 9:14 a.m. showed me standing in the hallway, facing the camera. I didn't remember doing that. Another from 12:02 p.m. showed the living room empty, but the timestamp was wrong. I was home at that time. I remembered answering a work call from the couch. I replayed the footage again and again, hunting for a mistake. There weren't glitches, no broken frames, no corruption, just absence. As evening approached, a feeling crept into me that I couldn't name. A sense that the apartment itself wasn't wrong, but the record of it was. Like reality and documentation were separating. I decided to test it. It was a stupid idea. I knew that even as I did it. I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and stood directly in front of the camera. I knew where it pointed now. I could imagine the frame without looking. I crossed my arms and stared straight into the lens. I stood there for a full minute. Then 2. Nothing happened, no emotional rush, no sudden movement, no blinking light. I let out a breath and felt embarrassed by the tension pooling in my back. "See," I said out loud. "Nothing." I walked away. Later that night, lying in bed, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the app. A new clip had been saved. Timestamp, 7:46 p.m. That was when I'd stood in front of the camera. The clip was 13 seconds long. In the footage, the living room light was on. The frame looked normal. Then I stepped into view, but not the way I remembered. On screen, I walked slowly into frame and stopped. I didn't cross my arms, I just stood there, staring. Not at the lens, at something slightly below it, at something closer. My chest tightened. The person in the footage lifted her head slowly. Her eyes met the camera. She smiled. I didn't smile that night. I knew that with absolute certainty. The smile on the screen was small, controlled, not joyful, almost curious. I slammed my phone face down on the bed like it had burned me. "No," I whispered. "That's not me." I paced the apartment, heart pounding, replaying every second in my mind. I tried to convince myself it was stress, misremembering something simple. But there were details in that clip. The tilt of the head, the stillness between movements. It felt studied, as if whatever was recording wasn't just capturing motion. It was observing behavior. I forced myself to watch it again. This time I noticed something new. When the woman on screen, me, smiled, the red indicator light beneath the camera brightened just slightly, like a response. The clip ended abruptly afterward, cutting to black half a second too early. No normal shutdown sequence. Just ended. I couldn't sleep after that. Sometime in the early morning hours, I found myself sitting on the couch with all the lights on, phone in my lap, staring at the live feed like it might blink first if I focused hard enough. Nothing moved. Nothing blinked. The next day, I called my neighbor, a woman in her 60s who lived 2 doors down. Quiet, polite. She'd waved at me once in the hallway. I made up an excuse about a package. When she answered the door, I tried to sound casual. "Hey," I said. "Weird question, were you around last night? Did you hear anything? See anyone in the building?" She frowned. "No, dear, why?" I hesitated. "Did you happen to see anyone in my apartment?" Her eyes widened slightly. "Of course not." I would have said something. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Right, sorry, just checking." As she closed the door, I felt a cold certainty settle in. No one else had been there. That footage couldn't exist. That night, a new file appeared in the app. I hadn't received a motion alert. It wasn't timestamped like the others. The file name itself made my throat go dry. WETCHINGYOUMP4. I didn't open it right away. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the screen, knowing, deep down, that whatever was inside would change something permanently. Eventually, my finger moved on its own. The file opened. The footage began not in the living room, but in my bedroom. From an angle the camera shouldn't have. The frame showed my bed, and me, asleep. The red indicator light blinked once on the screen. Then the clip froze. I didn't scream when I saw the bedroom footage. That surprised me. I think a part of my mind shut itself down the moment it realized panic wouldn't change what I was seeing. Fear became heavy instead, settling deep in my chest, pressing down on every breath. The camera in the living room did not have a view of my bedroom. No angle, no reflection, no trick of light could explain that clip. And yet, there I was. Asleep, unaware, observed. I locked myself in the bathroom and slid down against the door, the phone clenched in my hands. I replayed the clip over and over again, searching for an explanation. A mirror, a shadow, anything. There was none. The image was too clear, too intimate. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back against the tub, staring at the dark screen of my phone like it might light up again on its own. But it didn't. Morning came slowly, like it was cautious about entering the apartment. As sunlight crept across the walls, I made a decision. I wasn't going to ask the camera what it was anymore. I was going to find out why it was here. Everything in this place had a history. Walls, locks, people. Nothing exists without leaving something behind, including cameras. I started with the landlord. I went downstairs mid-morning, my hands shaking only slightly as I knocked on his office door. It took a long moment before he opened it. When he saw me, his expression changed, not to surprise, but to recognition, like he'd been expecting this conversation eventually. "I have questions," I said before he could speak. He hesitated. "About the camera," not a question. "Yes," I said, "about the camera and the person who lived here before me." His jaw tightened. "There's nothing important," he started. "I saw footage from inside my bedroom," I said quietly. So either you tell me the truth now, or I go to the police and let them decide what's important. That did it. He sighed and stepped aside. Come in. The office was small, cluttered with folders that looked older than me. He sat down heavily and rubbed his face. The previous tenant installed it, he said. Years ago. Why? He avoided my eyes. She didn't feel safe. The word settled over me like a weight. Why didn't she feel safe? I asked. There was a pause. She said she was being watched. My throat went dry. By who? He shook his head. She never said just watching. Following patterns. She insisted the camera caught things that didn't make sense. And you believed her? I asked. At first, no, he admitted. I thought stress, anxiety. Then she stopped sleeping, started sending emails at strange hours. She said the footage didn't match her movements anymore. My hands clenched at my sides. She disappeared, he said finally. The word echoed too loudly in the small room. No moving out notice, no forwarding address. Just gone. What about the police? I asked. They ruled it voluntary disappearance, no signs of struggle, no evidence. What happened to her camera footage? He swallowed. It was corrupted, or that's what they said. I stared at him. You left it there. You asked if you could disconnect it, he said defensively. I told you you could. That's not the same as telling me what it did. He didn't argue. I left the office feeling colder than when I entered. Back in my apartment, everything looked different. The walls felt less solid. The corners felt deeper. The camera felt closer. I pulled my laptop onto the table and searched for the address. It didn't take long. The news article was old, buried halfway down the results. Local woman declared missing in isolated apartment case. No picture, just a name. I read every word. She'd been single, quiet, recently moved in, no known enemies. No signs of forced entry, no camera footage usable. Her family insisted she wouldn't leave without telling someone. The case closed quietly. I noticed something else too. The date she disappeared was only 3 days after the camera had been installed. My phone vibrated. I froze. Motion detected. Living room. I didn't open the live feed. Not immediately. I stood up slowly and turned toward the camera with my eyes first, then my face. The red indicator light was steady, waiting. I walked forward until I stood directly beneath it. If this isn't you, I said aloud, forcing the words out, then show me who it is. Nothing happened. My hands were shaking now, but anger pushed through the fear, real anger. You did this to her, I said. Didn't you? The indicator light blinked once. Hard, fast, like a decision, I stepped back. No, I whispered. You don't get to answer. I grabbed the ladder from the closet, my movements rushed and clumsy. I climbed, reached, and ripped the camera from its mount. The wire tore free with a snap. The red light went out. I stood there breathing hard, the camera heavy in my hand. This ends now, I said. I placed it face down on the table, then my phone vibrated. Camera live feed active. My blood went cold. The app opened automatically. The screen showed static, not a broken signal. Movement, darkness shifting. Then slowly an image formed. The angle was wrong. Lower, closer. As if the camera was now placed on the table, facing upward. Facing me. I didn't touch the phone. On the screen, I saw myself standing there, holding the camera in my hands. But the timing was off. The woman on the screen lowered the camera before I did. She tilted her head, listening. Then she looked directly into the lens and spoke. I couldn't hear her voice, but I could read her lips perfectly. It's your turn now. The feed cut out. The red indicator light on the camera in my hands blinked, even though it wasn't connected to anything. I dropped it. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't plan to leave immediately. Just enough to feel like I could. I needed space. Time, distance. But as I zipped the bag closed, my phone buzzed again. No alert. No motion detected, just a new clip, time-stamped 10 minutes into the future. With shaking hands, I pressed play. The video showed my front door, opening. I didn't open the front door. I stood there with my bag at my feet, staring at my phone, watching a future that hadn't happened yet. In the footage, the door opened slowly. No hand was visible at first. Just the inward movement of the wood, inch by inch, like someone testing whether they were still welcome inside. Then the clip ended. I checked the timestamp again, still 10 minutes ahead. I locked the door. I locked it 3 times. Then I stepped back and waited. My heart hammered in my ears, counting seconds I didn't want to count. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. I started to breathe again, cautiously, ashamed of how fear had taken control of my body. Then, click. The door handle moved. Not violently, not rushed, slow, curious. I didn't touch it. I watched the lock hold. The handle stopped. My phone vibrated one more time. Motion detected. Living room, I didn't need to look. I already knew what I would see. The live feed showed me standing perfectly still, staring at the screen. Except something was wrong. On the footage, my eyes weren't moving. Blinking wasn't happening. I leaned closer to the screen. The woman in the video leaned closer too, but she moved first. That's when I understood. It wasn't predicting anymore. It was rehearsing. Everything after that felt like sliding slowly downhill, unable to stop. I stopped using clocks because time felt unreliable. Sometimes alarms rang early, sometimes late. Once, my phone buzzed with a notification that said motion detected while I was holding it in my hand. I started testing it deliberately. I stood suddenly. The camera feed stood first. I raised my arm. The version of me on screen lifted her slightly before I did. It wasn't copying me. It was leading. I began to notice patterns. The camera blinked more often when I spoke out loud. The feed adjusted faster when I repeated habits. My routines tightened, narrowed, became predictable. Sleep, stand, watch, sit, listen. And the more predictable I became, the more confident the camera appeared. One night, exhaustion overwhelmed caution. I sat on the couch and stared directly into the lens. "I know you're not here to protect me," I said. The red indicator light glowed slightly brighter. "You're not recording me," I continued. "You're studying me." No blink this time, just stillness. I stood and walked to the kitchen. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. Motion detected kitchen. I stopped. The phone buzzed again. Motion detected returning to couch. I didn't move. On the screen, the woman who looked like me did. She turned. She walked back. She sat down. I felt tears sting my eyes. "No," I whispered. "That's not me." The woman on the screen tilted her head. A gesture I recognized, one I made when I didn't understand something. It was learning from my confusion, learning how I reacted, how fear changed me, how silence held my attention longer than sound. I tried to break the pattern. I turned everything off. Lights, TV, phone notifications, Wi-Fi router, the apartment fell into darkness. For a moment there was peace. Then, soft and distinct, I heard it. A faint click, not electronic, organic, like a blink. In the darkness, something glowed. A small, steady red light. The camera, still on, it didn't need the apartment anymore. It didn't need permission. I backed toward the door, shaking, my bag forgotten on the floor. I unlocked it. I opened it. And stopped, because my phone vibrated once more. The app opened itself. No icon, no loading screen, just text. Simple, clear. Exit DTCTD. Below it, the live feed appeared, but it wasn't showing the apartment. It was showing the hallway outside my door, from my eye level, as if I were already standing there, already gone, already replaced. I whispered, "What happens if I leave?" The red light blinked. Once, twice. Then the screen went black. I stood in the doorway, heart racing, unsure which side of the door was safer. Behind me, the apartment felt occupied. Ahead of me, the future felt claimed. And for the first time since moving in, I realized something truly unbearable. It wasn't trying to trap me. It was trying to continue. Learn enough, become enough. So that when I left, there would still be something watching, something perfect, something me. I don't remember deciding to leave. I remember standing in the doorway, my hand on the knob, my body locked between two futures, one behind me, one ahead of me, and realizing that staying was no longer a choice. The apartment wasn't empty anymore. It hadn't been for a while. I stepped into the hallway. The second my foot crossed the threshold, my phone vibrated in my pocket, not a buzz, not a ring, but a deep, solid vibration that felt intentional. I didn't look at it. I already knew what it would say. I walked faster. The hallway lights hummed softly, casting long shadows that shifted as I moved. Every door I passed felt sealed shut, like the building was holding its breath. Halfway to the stairwell, curiosity betrayed me. I pulled the phone out. The app was open, live feed. It wasn't showing the hallway, it was showing my living room. Empty, then movement. Someone stepped into frame. She looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same posture, same tired slump in the shoulders. Even the way her hair fell against her face matched how I'd stopped caring about it days ago. She stood where I usually stood. She looked directly into the camera, and she smiled. That small, controlled smile again, the one I never meant to make. Then the red indicator light on the camera blinked. Once, deliberate. She reached toward the lens and gently adjusted it, tilting it upward, centering her face. Perfect framing. I stopped walking. My breathing turned shallow, my chest tight with a realization that settled slowly but completely. It hadn't been watching me to harm me. It had been watching me to replace me. I remembered the missing tenant. The corrupted footage, the silence afterward. I remembered the landlord saying she didn't feel safe. No, she had been studied, practiced, solved. The woman on my screen opened her mouth. There was no sound, but I knew what she was saying. "You can go now." I backed into the stairwell without taking my eyes off the phone. The video ended. The app closed itself. Just before the screen went dark, a final message appeared, learning complete. I ran. I didn't take the stairs carefully. I didn't think, I just moved down out into the cold night air as the door slammed behind me. The city felt unreal. Too loud, too uncontrolled. Cars passed, people walked by. No one noticed me standing there, shaking, staring at my phone like it had tried to kill me. I turned it off. For the first time since moving in, I fully powered it down. No screen, no light, no connection. I left the building and didn't look back. I stayed with a friend that night. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to justify needing a place to sleep and a lock on the door. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. I wasn't. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile, my smile perfected by repetition and observation. But nothing happened. No buzzing, no alerts, no blinking lights. By morning, exhaustion replaced terror. Days passed, then weeks. I found a new apartment. Different part of the city, new building, no pre-installed tech, bare walls, no history. I avoided cameras altogether, covered my laptop lens. Taped over my phone's front camera for a while until a therapist gently suggested that not all vigilance helps. Life, slowly, resumed something like normal. Almost. Then one night, months later, I sat on my couch watching something meaningless on TV, letting the noise fill the quiet. My phone rested beside me, face down. It vibrated, just once. Not a notification, not a call. A vibration like acknowledgement. I closed my eyes, counted, picked it up. The screen was off. No missed alerts. No apps open. But as my reflection appeared faintly on the dark glass, something else caught my attention. A tiny red dot. Blinking from the top corner of the screen, my front-facing camera indicator. I hadn't opened any app. I hadn't enabled anything. The light blinked once, then went steady. And in that moment, I finally understood what the camera had been teaching me all along. It was never about that apartment. It was about observation, about what happens when something watches us long enough, our habits, our responses, our fear. We assume being watched requires permission. We assume cameras wait for commands, but learning doesn't. Learning only needs time. I flipped the phone over, placed it face down, and whispered to no one in particular, "You already know how I blink." The light didn't turn off. If you're still here, thank you for staying until the end. The night the camera blinked back isn't only about a camera, or an apartment, or something watching from the dark. It's about a much quieter fear, the kind we rarely think about because it has already become part of our lives. Every day we are observed, by screens, by systems, by things we no longer question. This story asks one simple, uncomfortable question. What happens when observation stops being passive? Sometimes the scariest threats don't come from shadows or strangers. They come from familiarity, from reflections, from things that learn us so well that we stop recognizing where we end and they begin. If this story made you pause, if it made you glance at your phone, or your camera, or your screen just a little differently, Then it did exactly what it was meant to do. Stories like this aren't told just to scare. They're told to remind us to stay aware, curious, and human in a world that watches quietly and never sleeps. If you enjoyed this story and want more slow-burn psychological thrillers, true crime-inspired mysteries, and dark storytelling, please like this video. It helps more people discover these stories. Share it with someone who loves suspense and mystery. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories. New stories arrive soon, told softly, built slowly, and never forgotten. This is ShadowVoice. And remember, some cameras don't record to remember. They record to learn.